I think I didn't do anything wrong, just reached for comfort during the hardest years of my life. That's what I told myself when I blamed motherhood stress for everything. But the day my husband handed me legal papers with proof of my affair, I realized all my excuses had run out. My name is Ophelia Grant. I am 33 years old, and people always tell me I look tired. I laugh and say, of course I am. I am a mother. That excuse works for everything. If I snap at someone, if I cancel plans, if I forget a birthday, all I have to say is that motherhood is exhausting and everyone nods. I learned quickly that hiding behind stress is easy. Even when my marriage started to fall apart, I told myself it wasn't my fault. It was the pressure of raising a child. Michael, my husband, is 36. He works in IT, steady hours, never reckless, never wild. From the outside, people think I am lucky to have him. He cooks on weekends, reads to our daughter Ella, fixes broken things around the house. But to me, it started to feel like he was another child I had to manage. When Ella cried at night, I would be the one rocking her while Michael slept, because he had work early. When bills piled up, I was the one making calls to the school or doctor while he just kept working. At least that was the story I told myself. In reality, he offered help, but I pushed him away, saying he didn't understand the stress I carried. It gave me power to play the role of the tired martyr. That was when Julian came in. He was a yoga instructor at the studio near my school. I started going there under the excuse of needing to stretch after long days, but what I really wanted was the way he looked at me. He told me I had good posture, that I was strong, that I should take time for myself. His voice was calm, different from Michael's quiet practicality. Julian listened without trying to fix anything. I let myself believe that made him better. I started texting him late at night, telling Michael it was the parent group chat from school. Michael once walked in and asked who I was messaging. I smiled and said it was Mom's sharing tips about bedtime routines. He nodded and said he trusted me. His trust made me restless. I thought if he really loved me, he would press harder, check my phone, question me. Instead, he simply kissed Ella goodnight and went to bed. My sister Clara noticed my phone lighting up during dinner one night. She asked if I had made a new friend. I told her it was nothing serious, just someone who understood how stressful motherhood was. Clara said she got it, that I deserved breaks, and she didn't ask more. I took that as approval. But Margaret, Michael's mother, was sharper. She visited on Sundays and always studied me. Once she asked why Michael looked so tired lately. I laughed and said it was because he left all the parenting to me. Margaret gave me a hard stare and told me Michael worked hard for this family. I rolled my eyes and told her she didn't understand what it was like to carry the mental load. That phrase, mental load, made me sound like a victim. People rarely argue with a victim. That night, Michael walked into the kitchen while I was smiling at my phone. He asked if everything was okay. I told him yes. I was just checking with Clara about Ella's school project. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I told myself his silence was weakness, but the way his eyes lingered on me before he walked away unsettled me. For the first time, I wondered if maybe he didn't believe my excuses, even if he didn't say it out loud. Julian made it easy for me to believe I wasn't doing anything wrong. He always smiled when I walked into the yoga studio, always asked how I was holding up, always told me I deserved more rest. I told myself I was only there to stretch and relax, but I started staying longer after class, lingering in the back room while he packed up mats. He said I carried stress in my shoulders, and when he touched my back lightly to show me how to breathe better, I felt more seen than I had in years. At home, Michael tried to plan family outings, trips to the park with Ella, even simple dinners together. I told him I was too tired, that I needed time for myself. He said he wanted us to feel like a family again, but I snapped that he had no idea how hard it was for me. He looked confused, as if he couldn't understand what had changed. I made sure he believed the problem was him, not me. When Clara came over, I told her Michael never gave me space, that he didn't appreciate all the little things I did. She nodded and said I needed freedom, that I shouldn't let marriage smother me. Hearing her agree made me feel justified in spending more time with Julian. One night, Michael booked a table at a restaurant, saying it would be good to have a quiet meal together. We sat with friends and family, Ella asleep at home with Margaret. At first, things were calm, but I couldn't resist bringing up Julian. I told everyone how much energy he had, how inspiring his classes were, how even after a full day he still managed to make people feel alive. People smiled politely, but I noticed Michael staring down at his fork. He tried to share a story about his work project, and I interrupted, saying no one wanted to hear about IT when we could talk about health and wellness. Some friends chuckled awkwardly, while Margaret's face tightened. I added with a laugh that Michael always looked exhausted, while Julian never seemed to run out of energy. The table went quiet, and Michael excused himself early, saying he had an early morning. I told everyone he was just sensitive and dramatic, but inside, I felt a sting at the way he walked out without even glancing back. Later that night, when he returned home, I found him sitting at the desk, writing something in a notebook. I asked what he was doing, and he said it was just things he needed to track. I teased him, called him boring for taking notes instead of enjoying his evening. He didn't respond, just kept writing. His silence unsettled me more than his anger ever could. I told myself he was jealous of Julian, that he couldn't handle being compared to someone better. But the truth was, he wasn't looking jealous. He was looking patient, like a man gathering strength. Margaret called the next day and asked if everything was all right between us. I told her Michael was sulking and that she shouldn't worry. She said quietly that respect mattered more than excuses. I hung up annoyed, but her words lingered. I had thought I was untouchable behind my motherhood shield. But watching Michael bent over his desk, steady and silent, made me wonder if I was wrong. The following weekend, we were invited to a gathering with other parents from Ella's school. It was supposed to be light-hearted, a chance to relax, but I turned it into another stage for my performance. People asked how I was managing motherhood and work, and I sighed dramatically, saying it was overwhelming. I added that Julian had been a lifesaver, always supportive, always reminding me to breathe and take care of myself. A few parents smiled politely, but I saw Michael's expression tighten. He tried to add something about how he had been helping Ella with reading every night, but I cut in quickly, saying Julian was the one who really understood what stress felt like. Some laughed nervously, others looked down at their cups, but I kept going, enjoying the way the spotlight stayed on me. Afterward, Michael asked in a low voice why I kept bringing Julian up in front of people. I told him he was imagining things, that he was insecure, and looking for problems where there were none. I said he should be glad I had someone encouraging me to stay healthy. He said it didn't feel innocent, and I rolled my eyes, calling him paranoid. That word always shut him down, and I used it again. Later that night, Clara stopped by, and I told her what happened. She said Michael was overreacting, that I deserved attention and support, but her voice wasn't as confident as before, and she didn't meet my eyes. Margaret, however, grew sharper. She pulled me aside at the gathering and asked why I spoke to Michael as if he were useless. I told her she was old-fashioned and didn't understand modern marriages, that roles had changed. She shook her head and told me respect had not changed. Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, so I laughed and brushed it off. When we got home, Michael didn't raise his voice or accuse me. He simply went to his desk again. I walked in later and found him surrounded by papers, receipts, bills, and what looked like printed messages. I asked what he was doing, and he said calmly that he was organizing important documents. I mocked him, saying no one cared about his paperwork obsession, that he should try being spontaneous like Julian. He didn't look up. His silence rattled me, so I pressed harder, accusing him of being jealous and bitter. He just kept placing papers into neat folders, steady and deliberate. That calmness unnerved me more than if he had shouted. I went to bed telling myself he was too weak to act, that all he would ever do was sulk and scribble in his notebooks. But lying there in the dark, I couldn't shake the image of him at that desk, methodical and focused, building something I couldn't quite see. It was the first time I realized he might not be as powerless as I had convinced myself. I thought the best way to silence Michael's quiet judgment was to remind everyone that I was in control, so I suggested hosting a family event at our home. I told myself it would show people I was thriving, balancing motherhood, work, and still glowing with energy. I decorated the house, prepared food that I barely touched, and made sure to dress in a way that would get compliments. I even hinted to Julian about stopping by, though he never gave me a clear answer. Michael said nothing when I told him about the party. He only asked what the celebration was for. I snapped that not everything needed a reason, that maybe he should learn to enjoy life instead of being so boring. He just nodded in that same calm way that had begun to haunt me. On the day of the gathering, friends and family filled our living room. I floated from group to group, laughing too loudly, making small digs at Michael about how he never helped enough or how tired he always looked. A few laughed politely, others shifted uncomfortably. Clara whispered that maybe I should ease up, but I told her I was only joking. Margaret, though, didn't hide her disapproval. She sat stiffly, her eyes following every word I spoke, her lips pressed tight. Ella clung to Michael's side most of the evening, refusing to come to me when I called her. That annoyed me, so I joked in front of everyone that she was becoming a daddy's girl because I was always too busy carrying the real load. Some people laughed, but Margaret's glare could have cut through stone. As the evening went on, I expected Michael to retreat to a corner, but instead he stood up slowly. He walked into his office and returned with a neat envelope in his hand. Without saying a word, he placed it on the coffee table in front of me. I tried to brush it off with a laugh, asking if it was another one of his boring reports. He didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the guests and said he had something important to share. The room went quiet. My pulse quickened. I opened the envelope and saw papers inside, receipts, bank statements, and what looked like screenshots of messages. I forced a smile and said it was nothing, just paperwork he obsessed over. But then he began to speak, calm and clear, listing dates and places. My heart sank as I realized what he was about to do. Clara's face drained of color, Margaret sat up straighter, and whispers spread around the room. I wanted to stop him, to shout him down, but my throat closed. He had chosen this moment, with everyone watching, to reveal the truth I thought I had hidden behind excuses. The room froze as Michael's steady voice carried through the air. He began reading the details one by one. Dates when I said I was at yoga but had been meeting Julian, receipts from cafes where we sat together for hours, and even records of late-night charges on my card that I had hoped he would never notice. He laid each page down on the table for everyone to see. Whispers grew louder, chairs shifted, and I felt the walls closing in. I tried to laugh it off, saying he was making a big deal out of nothing, that Julian was just a friend who helped me cope with motherhood stress. I insisted no one could understand the exhaustion I carried, but my words sounded flimsy against the neat pile of proof. Clara pressed her lips together and avoided my eyes, while Margaret's face lit with grim satisfaction, as if she had been waiting for this very moment. Friends looked away, embarrassed to have laughed at my jokes about Michael before. Michael never raised his voice. He explained that he had collected evidence for months because he was tired of being made to feel crazy. He said respect had been missing from our marriage for years and that motherhood was not an excuse for betrayal. My cheeks burned as I tried again to turn it back on him. I said if he had supported me better, if he had understood what I went through every day, I wouldn't have needed anyone else. Margaret stood then, her voice sharp, saying Michael had supported me more than most men ever would. Clara finally spoke, her voice shaky, admitting she had defended me even when she suspected something was wrong. That betrayal cut deeper than Michael's calm words. Julian, who had slipped into the party late, muttered about needing fresh air and left without looking back. I felt my stomach twist as I watched the door close behind him. The man I thought would rescue me from stress and monotony was gone in an instant, leaving me exposed and alone. Michael closed the folder gently, as if the matter was already decided. He looked around the room and announced that he had spoken to a lawyer, that divorce papers were in motion, and that custody arrangements for Ella were being prepared. His voice was calm, steady, and final. Gasps filled the room, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I wanted to scream, to tell them he was cruel, but the words died in my throat. He thanked everyone for coming, nodded once, and walked out with Ella holding his hand. The house that I had decorated to showcase myself now felt like a courtroom where I had just been sentenced. I stood frozen in the center of it all, realizing for the first time that my shield of excuses had shattered in front of everyone. A week later, I sat across from Michael in a law office, the papers spread between us like a wall. He signed calmly, his hand steady, while mine shook. I tried one last time, saying I had been drowning in motherhood stress, that I never meant real harm. He looked at me with quiet certainty and said stress was never an excuse for betrayal. The lawyer stamped the decree, and Michael stood, thanking her before leaving without a backward glance. I remained seated, the silence crushing, realizing my excuses had bought me nothing but the end of everything. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.